Good evening, everyone. Hey, sorry, but I do want to get to some books today and read a little bit, stimulate my mind. We're gonna start with the autobiography of Malcolm X. Read a page or so from there. I straightened out the falsehood and I avoided any criticism. I said that our disagreement had been in terms of political direction and involvement in the extra religious struggle for human rights. I said I respected the Nation of Islam for its having been a psychologically revitalizing movement and a source of moral and social reform, and that Elijah Muhammad's influence upon the American black man had been basic. I stressed to the assembled press the need for mutual communication and support between the Africans and Afro Americans whose struggles were interlocked. I remember that in the press conference, I used the word Negro, and I was firmly corrected. The word is not favored here. Mr. Malcolm X, the term Afro American has greater meaning and dignity. Dignity. I sincerely apologize. I don't think that I said Negro again as long as I was in Africa. I said that the 22 million Afro Americans in the United States could become, for Africa, a great positive force, while in turn, the African nations could and should exert positive force at a diplomatic levels against America's racial discrimination. I said all of Africa's unities in opposition to South Africa's apartheid and to the oppression in the Portuguese territories. But you waste your time if you don't realize that Verwoerd and Salazar and Britain and France never could last a day if it were not for the United States support. So until you expose the man in Washington, D.C., you have accomplished anything. You haven't accomplished anything. I knew that the State Department's G. Menon Williams was officially visiting in Africa. I said, take my word for it. You be suspicious of all these American officials who come to Africa, grinning in your faces when they don't grin in ours back home. I told them that my own father was murdered by whites in the state of Michigan, where G. Menon Williams once was the governor. I was honored at the Ghana Club by more press representatives and dignitaries. I was the guest at the home of the late black American author Richard Wright's daughter, beautiful, slender, soft-voiced Julia, whose young French husband publishes a Ghanaian paper. Later, in Paris, I was to meet Richard Wright's widow, Ellen, a younger daughter, Rachel. Ellen and a younger daughter, Rachel. We'll stop there. I wanted to read some from from my history calendar. Um, In 1944, the United States Supreme Court decided the case of Korima Sue versus United States, upholding President Franklin D. Roosevelt's 1942 executive order creating military areas where persons of Japanese ancestry were not permitted. This effectively meant that the thousands of Japanese Americans who lived and worked in these areas, many of them American citizens, were now legally barred from their homes and workplaces. Japanese Americans had already been targets of racial discrimination and were routinely barred from marrying whites, owning land, and working in certain industries. The government soon ordered the displaced Japanese Americans to report to newly established barbed wire enclosed internment camps for detention. a Japanese American man named Fred Komatsu refused to leave his home. When he was arrested and convicted, he appealed, arguing that President Roosevelt's order violated his constitutional rights. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court declared that protecting the country from potential Japanese spies outweighed the rights of Japanese Americans. Mr. Korematsu's conviction stood, and as many as 120,000 remained detained in internment camps through 1946. The Korematsu decision has since been denounced as an unjust and likened to the 1857 Dred Scott decision declaring black people ineligible for American citizenship in 1983. Mr. Korematsu won reversal of his conviction, and in 1998, President Clinton awarded him the Medal of Freedom, but the decision rejecting his appeal has never been overruled. I would like to see, in quotations, I would like to see the government admit that they were wrong, Mr. Korematsu said in 1983, and do something about it so this will never happen again to any American citizen of any race, creed, or color. All right. A little bit from the Frederick Douglass. By 1876, a pivotal general election year, and the nation's centennial celebration, only 3 southern states remained unredeemed by the white aberration, by the white counter-revolution against Reconstruction. Each of them, Louisiana, South Carolina, and Florida, had Republican-controlled regimes teetering on the brink of political extinction at the hands of terror, murder, and election fraud organized in the service of the Democratic Party and white supremacy. Indeed, the white South's revival and takeover of its political fate and the systematic destruction of black civil and political rights as well as economic independence had left a cloud of despair over the remain of any Reconstruction policy by the Grant administration. Worst of all, the experiment in racial democracy, born of emancipation and the remaking of the United States Constitution, the dream come true in 1865, and the legacy Douglass had for more than 10 years trumped as the long-term hope of his people, not only lay in tatters, it had been crushed by widespread, unpunished violence. Many hundreds murdered trying to vote or establish livelihoods. Thousands more tortured or intimidated away from voting, and ballot boxes stuffed or stolen. This was the sorrowful state of American democracy in the spring of 1876. Each note of either cautionary woe or modest celebration in Douglas's dedication speech at the monument with Lincoln standing majestically over the kneeling subservient former slave needs to be considered through this story of the impending faithful defeat of Reconstruction. At one and the same time, the speech was Douglas's careful statement of the great growth and change that Lincoln had presided over during the Revolutionary Wars years and lament over the apparent success of the counter-revolution against it. As he concluded, Douglass gave his audience a thoroughly mythic Lincoln, a gift from freed slaves to the nation's best sense of itself. Despite all of the terror and emanating from the South, he brought the Illinoisan into the community of freedmen. The president had been a man of work, a son of toil, the plebeian, honest boatman whose moral training came from labor. On this anniversary of the assassination, Douglas called the national nightmare for all its redemptive symbolism as well as power and the politics of memory. Lincoln's murder, he declared, was not only the hell black revenge of Confederate agents, but the crowning crime of slavery itself, as Reconstruction fell to new hell black actions by ex-Confederates. Douglas spoke to and for the black people who had planned and provided this event. This was a good work for our race today, he announced, fastening ourselves to a name, immortal, and defending ourselves against all who would scourge us beyond the range of human brotherhood. Douglas's Freedman Memorial Address was the tortured effort of a national stepchild to find the words that might still make the high and mighty of the United States hold a remaining lifeline to his people. It was an extraordinary first thing he clearly hoped would not be a last thing. He dearly hoped would not be a last thing. Douglas knew something of toil, an honest boatman. He was born a slave within yards of the Tuckahoe River in Maryland's eastern shore. He traveled in a sloop out the Wye and Miles rivers and up the Chesapeake Bay to Baltimore as a youth, and he crossed the Susquehanna and the Hudson in his epic escape from slavery. He knew something of rivers when when the shad of herring were running. Betsy Bailey, Douglas's grandmother, a master fisherwoman, would often spend half days waist deep in the beautiful, nearly 100-yard wide Tuckahoe, tending and pulling her sign nets. One of the greatest stories in American history began in February 1818 at the northwest corner of a horseshoe bend in the Tuckahoe, just above its muddy banks and layers of lush reeds, around a humble cabin managed by Betsy, a slave, and her husband, Isaac Bailey, a free man. Douglas lived most of his life believing that he had been born in 1817, but a handwritten inventory of slaves kept by his owner at birth, Aaron Anthony, recorded Frederick Augustus, son of Harriet, fed by 1818. He may have been born in the grandparents' cabin or in slave quarters near the tenant farmer's house, not far away, where his mother likely lived, or even in a field nearby. I'm looking at like a little picture here they have in the book of the farm limits and pretty interesting. The land and the extended families of slaves were part of the Home Hill farm owned by Anthony, whom Douglas called Old Master. Anthony owned some 30 people in adjoining farms to 600 acres in all. Although he did not live at Home Hill, he was the managing overseer of a much larger operation, the Y Plantation, some 12 miles to the west. By his brutal exercise of power, and possibly by blood, Anthony was and still is a crucial and mysterious figure in Douglas's story. The district in which Douglas lived his first 6 years was known as Tuckahoe, in the northeast section of Talbot County. the whole of which was drained by a larger Choptank River as it meandered to Chesapeake Bay. Douglas later uncharitably described the area as a famine stricken with a worn out, sandy, desert like appearance of its soil. But he could also remember with a somber nostalgia the stillness of Tuckahoe and the Kentucky Ravine, as it was locally known, which provided a path down to the river's edge. The nearest villages and the first towns he ever saw were Hillsborough, just 2 miles upriver to the north of the Bailey's cabin, and Denton, due east due east across the river in Caroline County, some 5 miles away. The boy enjoyed many hours of watching the commercial bustle and the great wheel around Lee's Mill, just a mile north across fields of corn. Mm. Justice is blind. Justice blind. Read from there by Matthew B. Robinson. Once police identify a suspect by collecting enough high quality evidence, their goal is to remove the alleged offender from the street. This is usually accomplished through an arrest. An arrest occurs when the police take a suspect into custody so that prosecution of the suspect may begin. Generally, arrests must be based on probable cause, a reasonable belief that a particular person has committed a crime. For serious crimes such as felonies, police officers must have knowledge of sufficient facts and circumstances that would allow a person of reasonable caution to believe that a crime has been committed. At this point in the process, some cases are filtered out before the next stage, booking. For example, juveniles may be sent directly to the juvenile justice system. If police discover they arrested the wrong person, the suspect may be immediately released. At the point of arrest, police are required to read a suspect his or her Miranda rights, so named because of the 1966 Supreme Court case, Miranda versus Arizona. Since this ruling, police have been required to read suspects their constitutional protections when the arrest occurs or is imminent. The Miranda warning reads, "You have the right to remain silent. If you choose to give up this right, say, anything you do, say, can, and will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one will be appointed to you." Suspects are then asked if they understand these rights, and if so, whether they want to give up their rights and make statements or answer questions. Many claim that this requirement places an undue burden on the police and makes it harder for the criminal justice network to obtain convictions because it encourages criminals to withhold vital information from the police. As a result of such concerns, numerous exceptions to this rule have been established through case law. Booking. After arrest, booking occurs. At this point, an administrative record is made of the suspect. Typically, his or her photograph and fingerprints are taken, and he or she may be questioned further by the police and or placed in a lineup for witness or victim identification. After booking, the suspect may be charged with specific criminal offenses. If the prosecutor thinks there is a sufficient quality and quantity of evidence indicating the suspect is indeed guilty of the offenses charged, a person can always be released and later rearrested if further evidence for the suspect's guilt is discovered. Release is another form of filtering. This one is readings for writers by Anthony C. Winkler. Joe Ray McEwen. Guidelines for critical reading. Critical reading means reading with a conscious effort to see both sides of an issue, draw valid conclusions, and detect bias. It means burrowing below our immediate reaction to a piece and trying to fathom its underlying meaning. This is not the sort of reading we do when we read a detective novel or a pulp magazine, but it is the best way to read, although perhaps the most strenuous because it helps us to learn. Here are 10 guidelines to help you read critically. Understand what you read. Reread difficult passages, looking up in a dictionary all the unfamiliar words. You cannot form an opinion of what you have read unless you understand what the author is saying. Imagine an opposing point of view for all opinions. If a writer says that the Arab punishment of cutting off the hands of a thief is more humane than the American equivalent of imprisonment, reverse their argument and see what happens. In other words, look for reasons that support the other side. Search for biases and hidden assumptions. Be alert to the biases of the writer. For example, an atheist arguing for abortion attribute to will not attribute a soul to the unborn fetus. A devout Catholic will ferret out possible biases and hidden assumptions. Check the author's age, sex, education, and ethnic background. These and other personal biographical influence the opinions expressed in the work, but you cannot know to what extent unless you know something about the author. That is the rationale behind the use of biographical headnotes with accompanying which accompany the articles in this book. All right. Separate emotion from fact. Talented writers frequently color an issue with emotionally charged language, thus casting their opinions in the best possible light. For example, a condemned murderer may be described in sympathetic language that draws attention away from a horrifying crime. Be alert to sloganeering to bumper sticker philosophizing about complex issues. Emotion is no solution to complicated problems. If the issue is new to you, look up the facts. If you are reading about an unfamiliar issue, be willing to fill in the gaps in your knowledge with research. For example, if you are reading an editorial that proposes raising home insurance rates for families taking care of foster children, you will want to know why. It is because foster children do more damage than natural children? Is it because parents are apt to file lawsuits against foster parents? You can find answers to these questions by asking representatives of the affected parties, the State Department of Social Services, typical insurance agencies, foster parents associations, the County Welfare Directors Association, any children's lobby, and others. To make a critical judgment, you must know and carefully weigh the facts. Use insights from one subject to illuminate or correct another. Be prepared to apply what you already know to whatever you read. History can inform psychology. Literature can give you insights into geography. For example, if a writer in psychology argues that most oppressed people develop a psychology of defeat that gives them a subconscious desire to be subjugated and makes them prey to tyrants, your knowledge of American history should tell you otherwise, as proof that oppressed people often fight oppression until death. You can point to the Battle of Fallen Timbers in 1794, the Battle of Tippecanoe in 1811, and the Black Hawk War of 1832, conflicts in which the Indians fought desperately to retain their territories rather than go meekly to the reservations. In other words, you can use what you have learned from history a falsehood to refute a falsehood from psychology. Evaluate the evidence. Critical readers do not accept evidence at face value. They question its source, its verifiability, its appropriate its appropriateness. Here are some practical tips for evaluating evidence. Verify a questionable opinion by cross-checking with other sources. For example, if a medical writer argues that heavy smoking tends to cause serious bladder disease in males, check the medical journals for confirmation of this view. Diligent research often turns up a consensus of opinion among the experts in any field. Check the date of the evidence. In science, especially, evidence varies from year to year. Before 1987, no one really knows exactly how the immune system worked. Then Susumu Tangoa, a geneticist at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, discovered how the immune system protects the body from foreign substances by the manufacture of antibodies. In 1980, the evidence would say that the workings of the immune system were a mystery. That evidence would be inaccurate in 1987. I think I'm gonna end it there with the books for tonight. I pray everyone is safe and healthy. I know there's so much going on. There's just a lot of craziness happening in the world right now amongst our very own and amongst our people, amongst families, and it's just a lot of pressure on a lot of different levels. And then I know it can be overwhelming for a lot of people, and um, sickness, disease, losing a loved one, tragedies, accidents, all kind of things are happening, and I know the earth is continuing to suffer and go through its changes as well. Um, Relationships ending and families breaking up, and families being against each other, and it's just I really feel like it's a lot of spiritual warfare going on right now, and there's a lot that the human eye can't see that's happening, and it's just more of a reason for us to stay prayed up and to continue to give God the praise and glory and thanks for everything that He's providing for us and making possible for us, and just continue to ask for forgiveness and continue to try and just do better every day and make progress every day, and um, try and practice better habits, and better lifestyle, make some lifestyle changes that can benefit you in the future. um, if you're looking for a personal trainer and you just don't know where to start or how to start, you can contact me. Uh, the best way you know how, even if you need to contact me in comment section, or my email is khalik.parker@gmail. Very simple. That's probably the best way to contact me. Uh, so it's like, and fitness is usually a way to really get on track to a healthier lifestyle and a healthier life overall. You know, healthier mindset. Healthier habits, healthier routines. So there's also a lot of things that we can do as far as healthier diets and what we eat and take, like our herbs, our oils, more water. There's just baby steps that we can take that can help lead us into the right direction for better results, and outcomes. Um, just trying to process all that information just now, and I know that was a lot of information all at once, but it really does help give you some type of insight and pick your brain a little bit to kind of think a different way and think about other things, and just see how things just come about and why things are the way they are, and why people are the way they are, and why people do certain things. And reading is definitely a step in the direction of a healthier lifestyle. um, Reading definitely helps you kind of stimulate your mind, and get it elsewhere, and help it expand a little bit and broaden a little bit. you know um, I truly appreciate everyone that has been supporting the channel and tuning in, and sharing the channel, and telling others about the channel. I really appreciate everyone that has been reaching out, and just trying to keep in touch and come up with different ideas and different strategies and solutions, to different things. And I really appreciate that. I think we're living in a time where now we need each other more than ever, and that can be a basic phone call, basic text message, basic idea, basic link on something, or whatever it may be. So, but I'm definitely truly thankful for that, and I'm definitely thankful to be in a position to help others and to give back. That's like my main goal and my main motive and intention. You know, as life goes on and as life deepens and as life progresses, my main goal is just to be able to give back and help others, and you know, uh, help inform, help educate, people, um, because I was once uninformed and I was once uneducated, uh, one point in time, and I wish I had someone to, kind of talk to me and inform me and kind of guide me in areas where I just needed some type of answers and some type of, like, enlightenment. So I'm hoping I can be that for someone, uh, as best as I can and as much as I can, and stay sane and keep a mild head throughout it all, and do as best as I can, and just continue to grow and get better and learn in the process. And like I said, continue to give God the thanks for everything that He's making possible for you, and the protection He's providing you, and it's just there's so much that He does for us, and so much that He works out for us that we don't even realize and we take for granted. So as much as we can, consciously can, is, just try and stay, you know, in His Word and in His alignment for us, and His path for us, and within His purpose for us, as much as we can. So, if you haven't heard from me in a while, I'm sorry. It's been a lot going on. I'm just very, very busy. I have a lot going on, and I'm just trying to get, settled and on my feet and keep things going in the process. But I am very excited uh, for things that are happening and transpiring and unfolding. I will be sharing some of those things soon enough. There's a lot of things that I am getting into and experimenting with and dabbling into. So, and a lot of ideas that I just want to explore, and a lot of people that I want to collaborate with and link with. So, I'm looking forward to that, and it should be a lot of fun, and a lot of information and a lot of ideas, should come from that, and can't wait for it. Um, what else? What else? I really hope and pray everyone just continues to stay safe out there. Like I said, in this crazy, crazy world that we live in. We got the holiday season coming up, so you know, uh, things can just get really interesting. Let's just say that, you know, around those times. So if we can just, stay safe, stay out the way, do what you got to do, and just go home and be around your loved ones, and try and take advantage of the time as much as possible. While we're here and while we have our loved ones, appreciate them as much as possible. And I think that should do it. Like I said, just stay tuned for more workout videos, more history videos, more reading videos, more books. I have so many books that I want to get to, so stay tuned for that, and I'll definitely will be sharing them with you guys. And thank you guys again for everything, and I appreciate all the support and all the um, tuning in and all the views. And like I said, continue to be safe and give God the praises, and take care. Y'all stay blessed. Be safe. Peace.